Hello, welcome back to one of my videos. I am going to knit this little alien body. This is what it's going to look like after it's been knitted. The eyes have been added, but that's a different video. I am using a 2¼ millimeter needle, 2 straight needles. I'm also going to be using Stylecraft Special DK. I can't tell you the color, I don't know. And for the neck, Stylecraft DK, Special DK in green. So it'll be 2 rows for the neck. I have written out the pattern, which I will show here. You can always take a screenshot. I'm casting on 18 stitches, then I'm purling 1 row, and then in the knit row I'll be increasing by 16 stitches. 18 to 20 rows, not 18 to 12. 18 to 20 rows for the body, 2 rows for the neck, 14 rows for the face. I'll be placing the eyes as well, and then I'll be decreasing and until I get to 6 stitches. Then I'll be doing 14 rows for the antenna and decreasing to 4 stitches, and then threading the tail through those remaining 4 stitches. This is the increase for the feet, from the feet to the body, casting on 18 stitches, purl 1 row. The knit row will be knit 1, knit 2 increase across 16 stitches, knit 1, that gives 34 stitches, and I'll continue in stocking stitch. The decrease, I won't read the whole thing out, but let me see if I can position it properly. You can always take a screenshot if you want to, and then write it out in your own little book, or just keep it as a digital memory. So let's get started. I'll put this little chap aside. I have cut these. They were longer, but I do not need long needles because I'm working literally across a few stitches. I'm going to make a long tail because later on when I sew the body up, depending if I'm going to be adding the little arms, obviously the definition for the legs, and because I make a lot different colors, I don't want to have to go scratching through my colors to try and find the right color yarn. So I prefer to have too much tail than not enough tail for sewing up. Sewing up the back, I start up here and I go all the way down, and then I stuff him. I weave the neck, and then I stuff the neck. And this is a little crochet neck. With the tails, I just literally took a crochet hook, and then afterwards I worked those in just to give a bit of definition and to really hold it in place. This little alien will be a part of a keychain, so he needs to be fairly robust. Even the beads, I double stitched and went back and did all kinds of stuff to try and keep them as close to the little body as possible. And the eyes are safety net eyes, but I've also glued them in, and I'm trying to make videos as I go along. One little error, that's the manufacturer's default, and I should have placed it to the outside of the eye instead of the inside. That's a shame. But with the next batch I've just glued, I've been made double sure to put the manufacturer's defect to the outside of the eye. So let's get started. The tail, I basically pinch and then I pull it to my armpit, and that makes one arm. Everyone has a different way of casting on. This is how I cast on. I make a slip knot. Doesn't matter in which direction the slip knot is. Oops, and then getting the yarn through the two. I have the short tail to the front and the long tail to the back. Make it nice and tight, and then I cast on. Pull one needle out. That's the wind banging the door. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Turn it around. Once again, everyone has a different way of knitting. This is how I do it, continental style, with a little bit of a twist to it. I have a weird way of doing my pearls. So work across the row. This thread splits a bit, so I need to concentrate. Maybe for demonstration I should have chosen a better yarn, but I did want to do it in this color. Come on, be user friendly. I have Addy needles. I packed them away yesterday. Otherwise I would have had an Addy needle. I could have showed Addy sock needles. They have a little lace tip. And for the increase, it's very practical. But we'll make do with these ones. These are Arrows. Vintage. They were 40 centimeters long, and I don't use 40 centimeter needles, so I just cut them short. My mother will be horrified because they were her needles. So there I have 16. To the increase, I knit one, and then I'll be increasing all across the next 16 stitches. How do I increase? I knit one, I take my left hand needle, I pick up that little loop from the row before, and I knit into it. Knit one, pick up the loop from the row before, knit into it. Knit one, pick up from the row before, that little loop, and I knit into it. I just do that across all the stitches. I'm trying to keep my tension tight. For two reasons. First of all, I keep it tight with these first few rows so that when it comes to sewing up the little feet, the cast on isn't all over the place and wobbly and gaping. And also there's the stuffing problem with the stuffing. I don't want the stuffing to peer through or to come out or any of that. So chose a small needle, 2 1/4. This Special DK is thin. If I use a slightly thicker DK, sometimes one gets a thicker DK, I'll go up to 2.5 or even a 2 3/4. So I do change the needles. If it's very, very thin, I go down to a 2 mil. But I found that because I'm gripping on the needles, I was actually bending them, the 2 mils. So I put those aside. 34 stitches. I don't have to count. I mean, if it's 34 or 35, it's really not a problem, but there we go. Now I will continue in stocking stitch for the next 18 to 20 rows. I write down 18 to 20 because if I've been knitting and I'm watching something on TV and I make 2 rows too many, I don't pull it out, I just leave it. It's not a precise pattern, it's just a guideline. Comfort dolls tend to have a longer body, especially if they to look like little men and women. But for my alien, I've gone for the baby doll look. The big eyes, the big head, the tiny body. And so that is why he looks the way he does. If you have, if you don't know about Comfort Dolls / Izzy Dolls, then there's quite a bit of inspiration online. Just type that into the Google search, Comfort, and the word Izzy is I-Z-Z-Y. I'll put it in the description. And I have found that Braithwaite, I can't remember her first name, Braithwaite, I believe it is. I could stand to be corrected, but Google, if you type it in correctly, it actually does correct. If you put Comfort Doll or Izzy Doll Braithwaite, it'll come out correctly. She has some free PDF downloads for her different patterns, and she has a lot of different pictures up as well, I think on Etsy. But once again, if you just put into a Google search engine, you'll get some lovely ideas that you can springboard from. And once you've found the needle and the yarn that suits you, you can make your own designs, your own patterns. You can make them larger, you can make them smaller. And depending on who they're destined for, if it's for very small children, then one would sew on the eyes with yarn. But because my little alien is going to be a key ring, and it's for my daughter, she's in her 20s, I do not have to worry about safety measures. So I will continue in stocking stitch and until the neck. I'll show you how I do that. And then I'll continue from there. So I'll catch up with you at the neck. Bye for now. See you now. I have completed 18 rows. I used a marker on row 10 just so that as I was counting these ones, I didn't have to start from the beginning each time. I could literally just count up. One little tiny mistake there. The yarn was splitting a lot, and it is what it is. And now I have the green. I want to crochet a neckband afterwards. So one of the tails needs to be an arm's length and the other tail half an arm's length. And it doesn't really matter which one is which. So I'll start off with the arm's length. Then what I do is I make a little slip knot and add it as a stitch. I'll undo it when I come back after the second row. It is literally to anchor the yarn. It keeps it in place when I add a new color. We do that again. This time I'm just slip knotting to the back. Make sure I have the right tail that I'm working with. I have from the ball. This is from the ball of yarn. And go out again from the ball of yarn. Okay. Sorry if I did fall off the screen there. So now I have put the slip knot onto the needle, and I'm now going to make the first stitch in the green. Really, the purple is gaping. Don't like changing colors. I will be working the purple for the face. Just pinch it with my finger, pinching the tail. Stitch 1, stitch 2, stitch 3, and give the purple tail a little tug. Work across the row, stocking stitch. Comfort dolls can be worked in different stitches. Moss stitch is lovely. It's also compact. Moss is knit 1, purl 1, and then one works out the pattern so that one is always got one knit and one purl above each other. Unlike a rib you always make the purl above the previous row's stitch. That is so basically you're creating, well, you know what rib is. I'm not trying to teach. You know, moss stitches. It's worth looking up if you don't know moss stitch. It's nice and compact, and it's great for these little dolls. So you could make the little jumper if you're going to make an Izzy doll and you made trousers, and then you're going to make a little jumper. You can make that in moss stitch. I also like to make mini cables. They're quite cute. I made a bunch of Izzy dolls that were little men. They had little caps on, skull caps, and they had a cable up the front of the chest. So their little jerseys had a cable on it. That was really cute. Drop the stitch. Turn the work around. So much easier to do in stocking than in garter. It's a real pain in garter. One drops a stitch. Turn it around again. The style craft has got such gorgeous colors. I made a blanket called the Elmo blanket. I call the Elmo blanket. It's in my videos somewhere. and I use about 60 colors, I believe, and I joined them with a black single crochet and edged with black as well. Beautiful. So now I've come to the end of the row. I'm just literally going to pull and tug that little stitch which you saw I dropped it off the needle, so now it's gone, and I'm going to cut this tail right away, half an arm's length, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a knot. I literally tie a knot to join those two tails nice and tight, because there's going to be a lot of manhandling of this little pattern before I actually get to sew up the neck, and I just don't want those stitches running all over the place. I'll keep the knot in place when I'm actually sewing it up. I don't necessarily have to undo the knot because it's going to be on the inside. Now I'm picking up the purple again. If you wanted to change the color for the face, then you would do that. You could also knot them together. That's the things when you're making something that's stuffed, you can hide things like knots inside. I want this to be nice and tight, so pull the green tails tight, but I don't want to pull. This yarn splits a lot. Okay, that's the first stitch. Pulling it back, keep it under tension. Second and third and fourth. And I will just continue in stocking stitch until I have 6 completed rows, and then I will make a markers for the eyes. You can make the eyes on the 6th or 7th row. Doesn't really matter, depending on the size of the eyes, where you want them placed, and what kind of eyes you're going to be using. If you're going to be sewing buttons in, you also have buttons that don't have the little bar on the back. They have holes in it. So if you have the markers in place, then when it comes to sewing on the eyes, you can think, okay, well, I want them to actually be a row higher or something. But they're excellent guides to have the markers in place. It makes life so much easier, I found. Okay, I've just caught a little bit of that green there. It'll come off when I pick up that stitch. There we go. Give it a tug. Some yarns do not split, and one can go very, very fast. One doesn't have to keep checking. There's other yarns one has to be more careful with. I love crocheting with this yarn. I use a 4mm hook. Because most of them are on the thinner side of the DK range. So I will continue with this. It's taking quite a while, so another 4 rows. And then we'll meet up on how to mark the eyes. So it's coming along quite nicely. As you can see, it's going to be dense. It's got a bit of spring to it, this particular yarn. it's going to be a very pretty little alien. So I'll meet up with you when I have completed 6 rows. So here I am. I have completed 6 rows. And for the life of me, I have scratched my head the last couple of days. I don't know how it works. But making 6 rows has the thread on this side. I don't know how it is. I guess when I'm counting here 20, it's probably 19. Which means that's row 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. I don't know. Anyway, what matters is that I put the marker in the 6th row of the face. So however your stitch count is from the first row, I mean right from the bottom here from the cast on, it doesn't really make a difference. I'm just doing it from the neck. If you haven't used a contrast color in the neck, then you've got 18, 19, 19, say it's 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. So yeah, you've got 26 or 27 rows. I use the tails from the neck. Once again, if you haven't used a contrast color for the neck, then just go and find a contrast color. Cut a piece, not short, it's going to be long enough that you can tie a knot in it so they don't fall out. These ones won't fall out because they're very long. And I wrote it down just now. I wrote it down. So here we go. Screenshot. Oops. There we go. Screenshot. If I could just get it straight. There we go. Then you can crop it if you want to keep a digital memory. So the eyes is over 34 stitches. We're counting these eyes. Remember the alien is going to be folded. So, and you're going to have a seam. So half of 34 is 17. So you're going to have 17 stitches in the front and 17 in the back. But because you're actually going to be losing 2 with your sewing up, more or less you'll be losing, it won't be 2 full stitches. The edges aren't even full stitches. You can see how they pull in. So at most you've got 32 stitches you can basically count, which means you've got 15 for the front and 15 for the back. So placing the eyes, don't make the error of placing them as you would if this was the whole face, because that is not the whole face. This is the whole body, front and back. So you think, well, that's very, very close for the eyes, but once you've folded your little body around and you've stuffed him and everything, very quickly you can see the eyes are not too close together. I count 14 from each edge. So I start on this side because I'm not knitting, I'm just basically counting to put the markers in. 14 stitches, and the 15th stitch is where I put the marker. 14 stitches, the 15th stitch is where I put the marker. So 15 and 15 make 30. It means I've got 4 stitches left, and there'll be 4 stitches between the 2 eyes. If you want to make it slightly wider, your eyes, especially if you're using something smaller, something big, like a much bigger button or a big eye, then you could, this one's a bit, he's got a slightly bigger gap, I think, than this one here. He was probably, the marker was probably in the 14th stitch, and I think this one was in the 15th stitch. So, but as you can see, look, it's almost already falling off the face, the side of the face, because yeah, once he's stuffed and sewn up, you are losing centimeters, or millimeters rather. So I've been moving my eyes closer and closer and closer as I've been going along. How do I count it? So now I have my darning needle, 14 stitches, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and that's the 15th stitch. I'm going to take my darning needle, and just under the 15th stitch there's a stitch there. I'll put it in there. And now I've marked the one eye. I use another tail for the other eye simply because it's easier to come into the stitch from the front in the stocking stitch than it is to come from the back. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. There's my 15th stitch. Let's go under the needle, just under the needle. There it is. And pull the yarn through. If I was using a separate yarn, I'd cut it quite long, at least 20 centimeters long, and then I would tie it off in some way or another, because you don't want it falling out. So now my eyes are marked, and it makes it much easier later on to, when I'm adding the eyes. I've literally uploaded a video this morning on how I add the eyes. Now I'm turning, put my darning needle back on the magnet, little bowl, and I'm turning and continuing with my stocking stitch. All the way across. And as you'll see, when you come to where the eye is, it doesn't affect the way that you knit. Well, in this case, I'm purling this row. At first, I tried hard markers like this. It wasn't that practical. You also have the option of casting off one stitch there, and then when you come back on the next row you cast on one stitch there, and that makes a little buttonhole. And then you can put the safety eye or the button through that. You'll see in my video on adding the safety eyes, I actually add some buttons as well. So you see it's nicely in place. And you continue. This particular design, as I said, I was roughly counting. It says 14 rows here, but because I'm decreasing on a knit, it actually comes to 13 rows. So whether it's 13 or 15 doesn't really matter. And then I'll be decreasing on a knit row. So I'm going to continue with that, and I'll meet you after the 13th, 14th or 15th row, depending on how far you want to go, how big you want your face to be. Yeah, for the life of me, I do not know how it comes to 13. Anyway, so there's 2 green, and then there's 13 V's here. Go from the stitch, go all the way down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So the 14th is on the needle. So you can decide in your own pattern whether you're going to count that as 14 rows or 13 rows. Now we are going to decrease. And I took it off the pad. Let me put it back on just so that we can remind ourselves. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. There we go. If you want to screenshot that. The edge will always have knit 2, and the purl, there's no decrease on the purl. Purl is stocking stitch. So what I've written out here are all the knit rows. So we knit 2, then we knit 2 together, and we knit 6, and we did 4 times. That'll be the first decrease row. The next time we will knit 2 together and knit 5 4 times, knit 2 together, knit 4 4 times. We continue all the way until the last decrease is knit 2 together 4 times, and you'll end up with 6 stitches, and that will be the base of the antenna for 6 stitches. And we'll do that, and we will then knit the antenna for 16 rows. It'll give you this type of flared look with very neat stitches one on top of the other, and I do that because I add the beads onto that. If you want to stagger your decrease, randomly decrease, or work out a way that you do not decrease on top of each other because you want to have it, you don't want to have this definite line, then that's an option as well. And then here's the antenna, and then right at the top we'll decrease 4 and then pull the yarn through the remaining 4 stitches. So let's do the decrease together. The first 2, keeping it always under tension so I get this nice tight edge. Oops. I knit the first stitch and the last stitch. I don't slip the first stitch and purl the last, as that's an option on how to make an edge, but I don't for this particular pattern. So I've knitted the first one and I've knitted the second. Now I'm going to knit it together. You can knit it together whichever way you want. You can go through both stitches like that. You can knit them together, that's an option. Now we're going to knit 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going to knit it together. I'm going to show you how I've been decreasing, simply because I'm trying to keep it as tight as possible. What I do is I slip that stitch onto the right hand needle. I then knit the next one, and then I go back and I fetch the one I slipped. Why do I do that? It just makes that little loop at the back tighter. Knit 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll show you what I mean. So I slip one and I knit the next one. When you knit a stitch, there is a little piece of yarn that runs between the 2 stitches. That's what creates all these little bumps. Okay, that little piece of yarn there. When you only knit 1 stitch, it's tighter than if you've knitted 2 together. See how far this has got to go? It's got to go all the way past those 2 stitches, around the needle, and you knit it. If we're not careful, we can actually have a gaping section, little gape there, that'll start to form wherever we have increased. And I don't want that. I want it to be nice and tight. What you can also do is you can give it a tug like that if you want. Just need to remember to do that so that it doesn't gape. Why? Because we're stuffing it. It's a little toy. 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Slip, knit 1, give it a tug, go back and fetch the one you slipped off. When the decreases are so widely spaced, it doesn't really seem relevant or important, but you'll see as they get closer and closer, the yarn wants to stretch out and gape. Pulling this row, oops, making sure that's actually where the increase is. When the decrease, it was giving me a little bit of a problem. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, let's go back and do him properly, just in case he's splintered all over the place. Come on, yarn. I know, not the ideal for a demonstration, but then again, if you can see that even a tricky yarn can be used for these little creatures, these little comfort dolls, then think how much easier it would be with a bit of yarn. So first one, knit the first stitch, give it a nice tug, knit the second, and now I'm coming to my decrease. So I slip 1, knit 1, go and fetch the one I slipped, and knit 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes it's not always possible to count. You're watching something on TV or you're part of a conversation. In that case, you need to keep a sharp eye on your rows. I can see from the previous, this guy's got a, I'm literally just going to pick him up and add him to that. You'll start to see it creates that ridge. So now I know that's my decrease. This decrease is going to happen over about 13 rows. Counted it. See, I knitted him, and I'm not supposed to because he's part of the decrease. So I can just count if I want to. 2, 4, 5. So yeah, there's 2 left for the decrease. And 5 to the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Give it a tug. I'm going to knit 2, give it a tug, the second one, and decrease. That's ugly. Please be kind to me, yarn. Yeah, it can be very frustrating. I make these little test squares when I get new yarn, and I classify the yarn according to what my test square was like to, first of all, to crochet or to knit, depending on what my project is. And this pink one, and there was like a smoky blue grey one in the Stylecraft, Special Stylecraft DK. They were so thin. So difficult to work with. They fell into their own category, 2 of them. I was using them for my popcorn stitch, and so the popcorn centers, I used this one and the smoky grey because they worked quite well for that, but I didn't like them for just the compact section. They were just so thin. I'd forgotten about this one. Now that I'm working with it, it's going to be a tiny alien, that's for sure. Yeah, I could have probably used a 2mm needle. But the problem is they bend. See, my battery's a bit low, so I'm going to continue with this decrease until I come to 6 stitches. I'm going to plug in my phone for now so I can just charge, and I'll catch up with you when you've got 6 stitches left. Well, I'm coming into my 6 stitches, so this is my final decrease row. Knit 2, and then knit 2 together, knit another 2 together, knit another 2 together, and knit the last 2 together. It leaves me with 6 stitches, and now this is that forms the base of the antenna. Give it a tug, that first stitch, actually tugging each one of them, because these decreases are all lying next to each other and I don't want them to gape. I want it nice and tight for the base of that antenna. And then I will continue in stocking stitch for approximately 14 rows. So here I am. I've completed approximately 14 rows, and I am going to decrease by 2 stitches, so I have 4 stitches left, and knit 1 and knit 2 together, you can see that the technique's probably going to be better simply because it's splitting. Give it a tug. Very slow progress this video, hasn't it? There we go. You can do one more row if you want to, but at the moment I'm not. Take out my darning needle, get that ready. I'm going to cut an arm's length, so pinch my work and pull the yarn under my arm. It's an arm's length. Cut it off. Thread it through my darning needle. And then, so the yarn is on this side, I turn the work so the yarn is on the other side. Put it to the back. Pinch the work. Pull the needle out. And immediately slip the darning needle through. It'll form a loop. Continue pulling. The loop gets smaller and smaller, and that's how we close up the top. We zoom out a little bit. That's how you close up the top. And here he is, the antenna. I don't block it before I sew it up. All the way down to what will become the feet. I went up behind me, bumped everything, dropped my needle. Anyway, I thought I wanted to just get these squares out. So these are my little test squares. And I wanted to show you, these are the 2 colors that were such pains. And so I kept them aside for making the centers for the popcorn stitch. I do have, it's all Stylecraft Special DK. I do have a video on the popcorn stitch. It's beautiful, isn't it? And this is one that's slightly larger, and this is my compact granny square stitch. Now this one here, I didn't alternate directions with each row. See, I kept it on the same side with all of them, yes. But this little chap, I alternate sides, turn it over. He's little. He's a test square, so he's not any bigger than that. 4mm hook. Thank you very much for watching, and yeah, see you in the next video. Bye for now.